Think you know the greatest science fiction films ever made? Think again. Hollywood's graveyard is filled with visionary masterpieces that crashed and burned financially. Some lost millions, others killed careers, but all of them were decades ahead of audiences who weren't ready for their mind-bending brilliance. Ready to have your perception of failure completely rewired? Number 1. Blade Runner, 1982. Ever seen a film so revolutionary it redefined an entire visual language while simultaneously tanking at the box office? Ridley Scott's neon-drenched nightmare about artificial humans struggling with mortality cost $30 million but barely scraped $32 million worldwide, a catastrophic return for a major studio release. The studio executives watched in horror as their expensive gamble was crushed by a little film called E.T. What makes this financial disaster so fascinating is how it transformed from box office poison into Hollywood's most influential sci-fi aesthetic. The film's rain-soaked, neon-lit dystopian Los Angeles became the template for nearly every cyberpunk vision that followed. Those massive video billboards, flying cars skimming between decaying skyscrapers, and the smoky multicultural street markets? All pure Blade Runner DNA. Critics initially savaged the film, calling it confusing, slow, and emotionally empty. The theatrical cut with Harrison Ford's notoriously monotone voiceover, which he reportedly recorded while drunk to protest the studio's interference, was a compromise that satisfied no one. It would take 5 different cuts and almost 25 years before Scott could finally deliver his definitive version. Today, film schools study Blade Runner as a masterpiece of production design, philosophical depth, and atmospheric storytelling. Its questions about artificial intelligence and what constitutes humanity have only grown more relevant with time. The American Film Institute now ranks it among the greatest sci-fi films ever made. Not bad for a movie that nearly ended Ridley Scott's Hollywood career. Number 2. The Thing, 1982. Imagine creating a sci-fi horror masterpiece so viscerally disturbing it gets destroyed by critics, bombs at the box office, and nearly kills your career, only to be vindicated decades later as one of the greatest genre films ever made. Welcome to John Carpenter's nightmare. The Thing cost Universal $15 million, but earned just $19.6 million, a financial bloodbath that sent studio executives into panic mode. Why? It had the spectacular misfortune of opening 2 weeks after Spielberg's family-friendly E.T. Talk about tonal whiplash. The practical effects are what truly cemented this film's legacy. Rob Bottin's creature transformations remain the gold standard of body horror. That infamous defibrillator scene where a patient's chest cavity becomes a giant mouth that bites off a doctor's arms had test audiences rushing for the exits. Bottin actually checked himself into a hospital for exhaustion after the production. Critics absolutely eviscerated the film. Roger Ebert called it a great barf-bag movie, while Variety dismissed it as the quintessential moron movie of the 80s. Audiences, primed for cuddly aliens after E.T., were traumatized by this paranoid nightmare of an extraterrestrial that could be anyone. The irony? Today it's considered Carpenter's magnum opus and regularly tops best horror film lists. Its bleak, ambiguous ending was radically anti-Hollywood, and its themes of isolation, paranoia, and distrust have only grown more relevant. Kurt Russell's MacReady remains the perfect anti-hero, gruff, imperfect, and willing to burn everything down rather than let the monster win. Number 3. Brazil, 1985. Terry Gilliam's nightmarish bureaucratic fever dream might be the only film on this list where the director literally stole his own movie from the studio to save it. Brazil cost $15 million to make and earned a pitiful $9.9 million in America, a financial disaster that still makes accountants wince. But the real story is the legendary battle between Gilliam and Universal Pictures that remains one of Hollywood's most notorious director-studio wars. Universal chairman Sid Sheinberg hated Gilliam's bleak dystopian vision and demanded a happy ending, cutting the film from 142 minutes to 94 minutes in what became known as the Love Conquers All version. Gilliam responded by smuggling a print to critics for secret screenings and taking out a full-page ad in Variety asking Sheinberg, "When are you going to release my film, Brazil?" The Los Angeles Film Critics Association awarded it Best Picture before it was even officially released, forcing Universal's hand. The film itself is a masterclass in retro-futuristic design, a world of pneumatic tubes, bizarre plastic surgery, and absurdist technology where paperwork literally buries people alive. Its influence is stamped across everything from 12 Monkeys to The City of Lost Children. Critics eventually hailed it as visionary, with Roger Ebert calling it a savage attack on bureaucracy, technology, and the dehumanized world. Today, its themes of government surveillance and soul-crushing bureaucracy feel chillingly prophetic. Brazil stands as proof that sometimes the greatest sci-fi visions are the ones the suits are most desperate to bury. Number 4, Dark City, 1998. Before The Matrix blew minds with its reality-bending premise, Alex Proyas's Dark City was playing in the same sandbox and getting criminally ignored at the box office. This neo-noir sci-fi masterpiece cost New Line Cinema $27 million, but earned just $14.4 million worldwide, a financial disaster that quickly sent it to the DVD bargain bin. Why did it fail? Poor marketing that couldn't explain its complex premise, and a studio that butchered the opening with a voiceover that gave away the entire mystery. The film drops you into a perpetually dark metropolis where it's always night. People can't remember their past, and pale, bald men in trench coats manipulate reality while you sleep. Its stunning visual design blends 1940s noir with German expressionism and Gothic horror, a city of impossibly tall spires and buildings that physically reshape themselves while citizens slumber. Roger Ebert called it a great visionary achievement and named it the best film of 1998. But most critics were too distracted by Titanic to notice. The film's exploration of memory, identity, and reality predates Inception and The Matrix by years, with Proyas creating a world where human consciousness itself is the battlefield. The director's cut, released years later without the spoiler-filled opening narration, finally let viewers experience the mystery as intended. Today, film scholars rank it among the most underappreciated sci-fi gems ever made, its influence visible in everything from Inception to The Matrix and Stranger Things. Sometimes being first with a revolutionary idea just means nobody understands what they're looking at. Number 5, Donnie Darko, 2001. How does a film that made just $7.5 million worldwide on a $4.5 million budget end up with its own cult religion? Richard Kelly's mind-bending suburban nightmare about time travel, parallel universes, and a demonic bunny named Frank opened just weeks after 9/11, possibly the worst timing imaginable for a dark, disturbing film about the apocalypse. Theaters couldn't dump it fast enough. What makes Donnie Darko so fascinating is how it transformed from box office poison into a cultural phenomenon through DVD and word of mouth. College dorm rooms across America became unofficial screening rooms as students debated its Byzantine plot and dissected its dense mythology. The film's website included 28 pages of supplementary material to explain the philosophy of time travel, and fans still weren't satisfied. Critics were initially split, with some praising its ambition and others dismissing it as pretentious nonsense. Empire magazine's review nailed it. Excitingly original, extremely disturbing, and totally unforgettable. The film launched Jake Gyllenhaal's career and turned Mad World by Tears for Fears into an anthem for disaffected millennials. Its time travel mechanics have generated endless debate, with flowcharts and YouTube videos attempting to untangle its paradoxes. Kelly's director's cut, released in 2004, added 20 minutes of footage and pages from the fictional Philosophy of Time Travel book, and somehow made the plot even more confusing. Despite its financial failure, Donnie Darko has infiltrated pop culture in ways its studio never imagined, proving that sometimes the most influential films are the ones that die a quick death at the multiplex before finding their true audience. Number 6. Children of Men, 2006. Alfonso Cuarón's dystopian masterpiece about the end of human fertility might be the most prophetic box office disaster of the 21st century. Despite universal critical acclaim, Children of Men cost Universal $76 million but earned just $70 million worldwide, a financial catastrophe that nearly killed the director's career. The studio had no idea how to market a bleak, philosophical sci-fi film about immigration, fascism, and the extinction of humanity. What makes this failure so tragic is the film's technical brilliance. Those legendary single-take sequences, including a 6-minute unbroken shot of a car ambush and a 7.5-minute battle scene, were revolutionary achievements in cinematography. Cuarón and cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki invented new camera rigs specifically for these sequences, including one mounted to the car roof that could rotate 360 degrees. Critics were stunned by its raw power, with the Boston Globe calling it an extraordinary vision of a broken world that looks disturbingly like our own. Its unflinching portrayal of refugee camps, government detention centers, and xenophobic panic feels more documentary than fiction in today's political climate. The film received 3 Oscar nominations but won none, further proof of Hollywood's inability to recognize its significance. Today, filmmakers from Denis Villeneuve to Christopher Nolan cite it as a major influence, and its technical innovations changed action cinematography forever. In a bitter irony, Cuarón would later win his first Oscar for Gravity, a much more commercial sci-fi film that lacked the profound depth of his greatest work. Number 7. Sunshine, 2007. Danny Boyle's solar epic about a desperate mission to reignite our dying sun burns with the intensity of a star, and crashed with similar destructive force at the box office. Fox Searchlight spent $40 million on this visually stunning space odyssey, but earned back just $32 million worldwide. The studio's marketing department couldn't figure out if it was a disaster movie, psychological thriller, or religious allegory, so they gave up trying. What makes Sunshine extraordinary is its scientific ambition combined with religious awe. Boyle consulted with quantum physicist Brian Cox to create a scientifically plausible premise, well, mostly, while exploring humanity's spiritual relationship with the sun. The ship's observation deck, where crew members bask in the filtered glow of our star, became one of cinema's most mesmerizing spaces. The visual effects team created entirely new rendering techniques to depict the sun as a living, breathing entity that dominates every frame. Critics were divided, praising its first 2/3 before lambasting its controversial third-act shift into slasher territory. Roger Ebert called it a wonderful film, while The Guardian dismissed it as deep space hokum. This polarized response helped kill its commercial prospects. Cillian Murphy's physicist Kappa represents the perfect balance of scientific rationality and human emotion, making the ultimate sacrifice with a physicist's precise calculation and a poet's acceptance of transcendence. The film's final moments, where time dilates as Kappa reaches out to touch the solar material rushing toward him, remains one of the most beautiful deaths ever filmed. Today, Sunshine has found its audience, influencing everything from Interstellar to Ad Astra, with its blend of hard science and cosmic spirituality. Sometimes the most ambitious films are too radiant for audiences to look at directly. Number 8. Speed Racer, 2008. The Wachowskis' candy-colored adrenaline rush might be the most expensive art film ever disguised as a summer blockbuster. Warner Brothers poured $120 million into this live-action anime adaptation, only to watch in horror as it earned just $93 million worldwide, a financial wipeout that executives still mention in hushed tones. Critics pulverized it, audiences ignored it, and the studio buried it. But here's the twist. They were all catastrophically wrong. What makes Speed Racer revolutionary is its complete rejection of cinematic realism in favor of creating a live-action cartoon. The Wachowskis weren't trying to bring anime into our world, they were trying to pull us into the anime world. Every frame is hypersaturated with impossible colors. Cars defy physics as they flip and spin around neon tracks, and the editing creates a dizzying collage where time itself becomes elastic. The film employed a technique called digital compositing, where actors were filmed against green screens, then placed into computer-generated environments with deliberately artificial lighting. This created the flat, layered look of classic animation, a visual language that confused viewers expecting traditional live action. Critics weren't ready for its aesthetic assault, with A.O. Scott of the New York Times calling it an example of everything that is wrong with Hollywood. But a vocal minority recognized its ambition, with Roger Ebert praising its kind of liberty that digital cinema offers. Today, film scholars study it as a pioneering work of digital cinema that created its own visual grammar. Its influence can be seen in everything from Into the Spider-Verse to Thor, Ragnarok. The Wachowskis weren't just ahead of the curve, they were driving on a track nobody else could even see. Number 9. John Carter, 2012. Disney's epic adaptation of Edgar Rice Burroughs' century-old Mars Adventure series crashed so hard it left a crater in the studio's accounting books. With a staggering $350 million combined production and marketing budget, John Carter earned just $284 million worldwide, resulting in a $200 million write-down that became Hollywood legend. A film literally 100 years in the making, Burroughs published A Princess of Mars in 1912, took less than a weekend to become synonymous with box office disaster. What makes this financial catastrophe so tragic is that the film itself is a sweeping, imaginative adventure that honors its pulp fiction roots. Director Andrew Stanton, fresh off Wall-E and Finding Nemo, fought for years to bring Burroughs' vision to life, creating a fully realized Martian civilization with its own cultures, technologies, and creatures. Those four-armed Tharks, with their motion capture performances, were technical marvels, and the airships that sail the Martian skies captured the wonder of early 20th century science fiction. The marketing campaign became a legendary case study in how to sink a film. Disney inexplicably dropped of Mars from the title, leaving the generic John Carter that meant nothing to non-fans. The trailers failed to explain the premise or why audiences should care about this Civil War veteran mysteriously transported to another planet. Critics were mixed, with many praising its old-fashioned adventure spirit while criticizing its convoluted plot. Time has been kinder, with a growing cult following appreciating its earnest storytelling and spectacular world-building. The sad irony? Most of the sci-fi and fantasy films that John Carter supposedly copied, including Star Wars, were actually inspired by Burroughs' original Mars stories from a century ago. Number 10. Cloud Atlas, 2012. The Wachowskis and Tom Tykwer's sprawling temporal epic, spanning 6 timelines, multiple genres, and 500 years of human history, might be the most ambitious commercial failure in sci-fi history. With a $128 million budget, Cloud Atlas earned just $130 million worldwide. Technically not a loss, but a devastating commercial disappointment that essentially killed the market for mid-budget, philosophically complex science fiction. What makes this film extraordinary is its radical structure and technical audacity. The directors intercut between 6 different stories in different time periods, from a 19th century sailing voyage to a post-apocalyptic far future, creating thematic connections rather than linear ones. The same actors play different roles across timelines, sometimes crossing gender and racial boundaries with controversial makeup effects to emphasize the film's central theme of souls connecting across time. Critics were violently divided. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, calling it one of the most ambitious films ever made, while others dismissed it as pretentious nonsense. The New Yorker's Anthony Lane delivered the most cutting critique. The movie is so preoccupied with its own artistry that it forgets to be alive. The film's financing was as unorthodox as its structure, assembled from independent sources after major studios balked at the script. Tom Hanks later revealed he actually paid to be in the film, returning part of his salary to help fund production costs when money ran short. Today, Cloud Atlas has found a passionate audience who appreciate its cosmic scale and emotional depth. The Wachowskis' career never fully recovered from its commercial failure, but their vision of interconnected souls struggling toward enlightenment across centuries remains one of science fiction's most audacious experiments. Can you miss it theatrical runs, or did you discover them years later through the whispered recommendations of a friend who swore, "You have to see this"? Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us which other financial failures deserve recognition as misunderstood masterpieces. Are we witnessing any current box office bombs that future generations will hail as visionary? Remember, today's commercial disaster might be tomorrow's film school curriculum.